There is nothing like the moment of discovery. And now it's your turn. Explore the store that has something for everyone and make a great discovery of your own. On land or online.
The Indian Himalayas, the most spectacular mountain range in the world. In the east, this remote, lofty realm is believed to be the home of the gods, a place where myth and reality meet. In the foothills of the Himalayas lies Srinagar, the capital of Kashmir. In a rundown corner of town, an ancient tomb stood neglected for thousands of years until a team of scientists made a remarkable discovery. Could this be the tomb of Jesus? Delhi, gateway to the Himalayas. Home to 14 million people and the religions of the world. A congregation first gathered to worship Jesus here at St. James's in 1857. It is Delhi's oldest Christian church. But according to ancient Tibetan scrolls, there is a controversial legend that places Jesus' influence in India much earlier.
He suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried.
The legend claims Jesus survived crucifixion and traveled to India, where he was venerated as a great prophet before he died and was buried in a tomb in Kashmir.
He will come again and judge to live.
Anthropologist Jeff Saltz is fascinated by the legend and has come to India to find out more.
When I first heard this legend, I found it hard to believe. But I'm interested in finding out more about Jesus the man. What was his life like, and what can he teach us about enlightenment, about being human?
In the Kashmiri capital of Srinagar, a 2-day drive north of Delhi, lies the tomb that some believe contains the remains of Jesus. But the city is being torn apart in a violent struggle for control of the Kashmir region. Since 1989, it has not been safe to visit.
This is the Kashmiri Gate, which at one time was the outer border of the Mughal kingdom that was Old Delhi. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get to the real Kashmir where I hope to be today, because that's where the big war is happening. Since '89, it's been a war zone. In the last 2 weeks alone, 100 people have been killed there. That's where the tomb of Jesus that we're talking about was found. But the good news is that Fida Hasnain, the professor who found this tomb, will be here in Delhi to meet with me, and I'll talk to him about that right here. So in the meantime, I'm going to poke around Old Delhi and take in a few sights. It's definitely an in-your-face part of Delhi. But what's really interesting is, in the half block we passed, we've already passed a mosque, we've already passed a church, and of course countless shrines. So you have Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity. The only thing I haven't seen here is a Jewish temple.
Professor Fida Hasnain was the director of the Kashmir State Archives until his retirement. He has spent most of his life researching the legend of Jesus in India. With the troubles in Srinagar, he felt it was safer to meet me here in Delhi.
Hey, it's wonderful to meet you.
I'm
It's
here
wonderful
now.
to meet you.
You see, you could not come to Srinagar.
And is it really as bad as they say it is in
You
Srinagar?
see, the conditions are not peaceful for the tourists.
Fida Hasnain investigated the tomb in 1975. It was facing north-south like any other Muslim tomb, until he found something unusual.
I noticed that there are two entrances to the tomb. One is through the ground floor, the other is through the first story of the building, which has been constructed later on. Now the grave on the first floor is naturally north-south.
Like this.
Like this.
A Muslim.
But the ground floor door being east-west, that indicates that the actual grave would be east-west.
Meaning probably a person of Jewish origin.
Yes, naturally,
Wow.
follower of Moses.
What did you notice when you came upon the tomb?
Yes, two assistants of mine were with me, and we had gone there just to survey and see what is inside. We entered, and in the corner we saw some rosaries. There was a cross also there. I asked one of my assistants just to clear it. It was quite dark, but anyhow he cleared it, and he said, "Oh, I feel some sort of sculptured stone is here." We just cleaned the surface, and there I found feet impressions. And looking at them, it appeared it had wound marks.
Interestingly, records show the tomb dates to the 1st century, and many Kashmiris really believe the feet impressions were created by an artisan who saw Jesus. They believe he faithfully replicated Jesus' wounds of crucifixion. Feet sculptures like this are common, but Hasnain had never seen anything with these crescent-shaped markings.
I felt astonished to see these wound marks, and at once it took me to the crucifixion scene where Jesus was put on the cross. There are believers who say Jesus is buried there. This means he was not killed on the cross, but he went on his mission to other lands.
Some Kashmiris believe Jesus came to India and that he belongs as much to them as he does to the rest of the world.
The present thinking in the West is that they have, so to say, excuse me for saying, monopolized Jesus Christ as their own. They feel that he is a Westerner, but the facts are that Jesus belongs more to the East.
So your conclusion is that he was indeed in India and that he died in India.
Yes, the research is so far conducted by me and other scholars. They lead us to this conclusion, yes.
It's hard to imagine Jesus being here. It's hard to imagine this place being any other than Buddhist and Hindu and Muslim. But after spending time with the professor, you know, it's some pretty fascinating stuff. Really, to hear his story makes one feel like it's absurd and ridiculous. I mean, why would Jesus come here to India to die? It only makes sense that Jesus could have been here if he had come back after having been here once before. I mean, that makes the beginning of a plausible story. So my next step is to go to the Himalayas and to see if I can find out more and ask a whole bunch more questions to see if somehow this puzzle can begin to make sense.
For some, the idea that Jesus died in India is not such a leap of faith. For there is another legend that concerns the so-called lost years of Jesus, the years from age 12 to 30 that go undocumented in the Bible. According to legend, the young Jesus joined trade caravans that for thousands of years have connected Central Asia with the Indian subcontinent. He traveled across India until he reached Tibet, where he studied with Buddhist monks. Jeff will follow the trade routes said to have been taken by Jesus deep into Ladakh. He will journey through the Zanskar Valley and explore Buddhist monasteries near the capital, Leh, where it is said Tibetan scrolls describe Jesus' journey east. He will end his journey in the Nubra Valley, one of the most remote regions in the world.
This is incredible country. I mean, I feel like I'm riding on a truck through the bottom of the Grand Canyon, populated by Tibetans. It's absolutely, it's incredible. It's dry, it's barren, just little parcels of emerald life bursting forth as you travel along. Incredible place. I had no idea it would be this wonderful, actually. About 20 years ago, my first trip to Tibet, I was in the Potala, the Dalai Lama's palace in Lhasa. I remember a lot of the lamas expressed that Jesus had a presence in Buddhism, and it turns out there's a large basis of legendary evidence that talks about Jesus in the Himalayas. Well, I've done lots of investigations in my life as an anthropologist, but when you think about the implications, if we were to discover any real evidence that Jesus was indeed in this part of the world, it would change the way we look at certainly religious history across the planet.
As far back as the 4th century BC, Alexander the Great and his armies reached India. Relics discovered from Persia to North India show there was movement between Palestine and the Himalayas long before the 1st century. So it is possible that Jesus could have made this trip in his lifetime. And if he did, he would have encountered Buddhist ideas.
Ladakh has been a Tibetan Buddhist country for over 1,000 years, although there's evidence that Buddhism was here a lot before that. As a matter of fact, although Buddhism began about 500 BC, sometime around the 1st century, there were the beginnings of traveling Buddhist monks coming through here. And I'm about to pass a statue that was actually dated to 70 AD, which means had Jesus passed through here, he probably would have met a bunch of Buddhist folks traveling much as he was.
If I could find similarities between Buddhism and Christianity, it would suggest that perhaps Jesus was here and that he learned from Buddhism.
I'm just entering Zanskar. Moving into this place, I feel like the ancient Tibetan legend of Shambhala, which came to us later as Shangri-La, a mythical, magical, hidden land of enlightened people. And this may not be that place, but certainly in this moment, crossing the glaciers, spending days and days traveling, it feels like I'm arriving at someplace most remarkable. The Jesus that we talk about is known to people here as Jesus, but there was a character in Hindu and Buddhist lore from centuries ago that's known as Isa. And we've come to understand that Isa and Jesus are the same person. I've been doing amazing research since I started this project, and some of the stuff doesn't really hold up to much, but every once in a while you find something which is incredible. I've just come across the Bhajavidasya Mahapurana, which was written in the 2nd century, and in that very respected and well-known work, King of Kashmir meets in the 1st century, just a few years AD, a fair-complected, fair-haired teacher dressed in robes who comes from the West, who describes himself as being born of a virgin, describes himself as being persecuted by his own people as the Son of God, and his name, according to this traveler, is Isa Messiah, which is Jesus in India. So it's a pretty amazing piece of evidence.
Up here, high in the mountains, things haven't changed in 1,000 years. The whole of this region is dotted with Buddhist gompas, or monasteries. I was going to attend a prayer service called a puja at Karsha Gompa. was taken to the puja by my guide, Skarma. He's been coming here since he was a child.
How old is this Gompa?
The monk says this is the 2,000 years old.
2,000 years
Yes.
old. And the puja here this morning, what is this puja about?
We pray for all human beings, for all of the peace, for the world, for the everything for peace, you know.
For all sentient beings.
Yeah.
Prayers going out
Yeah.
across the universe.
Yes.
Wow. I guess from this vantage point up here in the mountains,
Okay.
it works pretty well.
I noticed that the puja has some similarities to a Catholic Mass. Ceremonial robes, incense, chanting, and the monks practice abstinence and celibacy. The Buddha even had the same teachings. Turn the other cheek was part of Buddhism 500 years before Jesus walked the earth.
Oh, that puja was magical, you know, and like it's really magical. I mean, it took spiritual sense around. It's a mind-altering, spirit-altering experience. It's great. It's great. I've been talking to Sonam Wangchuk, who is a very well-respected scholar as well as a monk here in Zanskar, and he hasn't really heard much about the legend of Jesus in Zanskar, but he has pointed out some wonderful similarities between Jesus Christ's teaching and the teaching of the Buddha. Compassion, kindness, warm-heartedness, non-violence, mercy, all those things the two have in common, remarkably in common.
I think the real implication is that Jesus' teachings authentically seem to be more like the teachings of the original Buddha. And perhaps what makes Christianity so different from Buddhism is the overlay that came after Jesus. That the historical Jesus is more like you or I than the Jesus we know today as the larger-than-life figure that the Church has created.
I'm heading along a remote offshoot of the Silk Road to the village of Pishu. I still hope I'll hear stories of Jesus that have been passed down over the centuries. Friends of my guide, Skarma, agreed to put us up for the night.
Thank you. Teacher, you're a beautiful lady. I have no idea what I'm drinking, but Skarma gave me the high sign. He said, "Don't drink it." So I sort of looked like I drank it, but a little bit of butter on the lip. It's a ceremonial welcome to where we are, which is Pishu. I like the hospitality. I like the room. Skarma, can we ask Tsering and Nima if they have ever heard of the legend of Saint Isa?
Isa Masih Mera, Isa Masih Christian shows. No, they have no idea, any idea.
No idea. No, never heard any story.
Never heard any stories.
Oh.
The only way out of Zanskar is by river, and I was to be among the few to have undertaken this spectacular journey through the narrow and treacherous gorge.
In terms of evidence so far, Carmen and I have talked to 24 people, from monks to people along the side of the road, and no one's heard anything about Jesus. The only reason I am still kind of optimistic is that there were lots of travelers for years, for centuries, that talked about hearing Ladakis tell stories about Jesus Christ having been here.
Jesus had traveled through this territory, he would have seen exactly what we're seeing. I mean, not a shred of litter, not a bit of evidence of human habitation except for the occasional stupa, which he might even have seen. So, if Jesus were here, he would have seen what we're seeing. He probably wouldn't have floated in a rubber raft. Then again, he might have walked down the water. The canyon has just opened, and we see for the first time, I see a chorten right up there. I see a trail right behind me, and I think we've sort of left the inner gorge of Zanskar, which I guess means we've officially survived the descent of the Zanskar Gorge, which is good news. Okay, Joe. See you, Skarma. All right. Appears okay. Yeah. All right. Woo! Great.
Carefully.
Okay. Excellent. Okay.
Okay, Jay. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Write letter, huh?
I'll write letter.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Oh! Chule! Chule!
It seems the stories of Jesus in the Himalayas are less popular among local people than I had expected. I'm beginning to wonder if anyone knows about this legend at all. But I had heard of a famous oracle in these parts whose reputation is known across the Himalayas.
Bus goes too late. Excellent. Managed to get dropped off in Cebu on the way to Leh. This is the home of the famous oracle of Cebu, who's recognized by the Dalai Lama. Cebu! Cebu! And every culture has some sort of shamanic tradition, and in Tibetan Buddhism, it's the oracle. So I thought in my attempt to leave no stone unturned, I would consult the supernatural about the whereabouts of Jesus Christ in the turn of the first millennium. See if I'm in the right place. Chule! Chule!
When the oracle goes into a trance, she is possessed by a Buddhist spirit who speaks through her. When she's not in the trance, she's an ordinary grandmother.
Would you ask the oracle then if in the oracle's wisdom Jesus Christ has come through Ladakh in India?
Yes. Kong kirtana gagarni gyutetena la.
Tesang kuli lumpe gone tene kone. Staksik duwa.
To dasang yoda here.
Dasang.
Yes, Jesus Christ been to Ladakh and he brought a stick. And this stick is presently it's remain in the hill, you know. And he put some sign over there. Yeah.
Huh.
That's true.
That's true. So Jesus did come through Ladakh.
Yeah.
Thank her very much. You'll take no more of her time. Chule. Tashi Dilek. Chule. Tuchiche. Oracle said Jesus walked among us here in Ladakh. Oracle said really straight out that Jesus came here and was here. There's some evidence apparently up in these mountains somewhere. It's good news, I guess. Do I believe the oracle? Well, I mean, people come here from all over the world to be healed and are healed. People come here to ask questions and get answers. So it's hard to believe, but it's also hard to totally disbelieve.
Leh has been a base for travelers and explorers since the turn of the century. And Jesus, known here as Isa, has long been part of folklore.
There are legends of someone called Isa coming through Leh. Travelers in the 1920s talked about meeting a Hindu postmaster who said at this very tree, someone named Saint Isa preached and spoke and told the masses about life and love. So is this tree 2,000 years old? It's kind of hard to say. It's certainly alive with life.
It was another traveler in the late 19th century that first heard the stories of Jesus in the Himalayas. An hour's drive from Leh, high in the mountains, is Hemis Gompa, the most revered Buddhist monastery in Ladakh. Here, in 1887, a discovery was made that could have changed the course of Christian history. A Russian explorer named Nicholas Notovich came to the Himalayas looking for ancient Buddhist text. Instead, he found a piece of evidence that might have proved Jesus was in India. Notovich had been traveling for months when he heard rumors of ancient scrolls said to solve the riddle of Jesus' lost years. Notovich made it his mission to find those scrolls. It was an accident that led to his greatest discovery. Thrown by his horse and his leg broken, his porters led him to the secluded Hemis monastery. The monks showed him great kindness and tended to his wounds. Notovich spent weeks recuperating and repeatedly asked to see the scrolls that talk of Jesus. Notovich realized this was his chance to rewrite the history books. After much pleading, a monk finally brought him 2 volumes of loose leaves yellowed with age. The monk read from the scrolls, and Notovich carefully wrote down his translator's words. The scrolls had an incredible story to tell. They describe the life of Saint Isa, a divine infant born in Israel. They say Isa left his homeland aged 13 to travel to India. They describe his route and say he spent time studying with Hindu and Buddhist masters before returning to Palestine by way of the Himalayas. Notovich's discovery shook the Western world. Orthodox religion called his findings blasphemous, and many attempted to discredit his work. The scrolls have since disappeared, and now no one knows where they are, or indeed if they ever existed. At the same time that Notovich published his research, the first Christian missionaries arrived in Leh, and they made a bizarre discovery.
When the missionaries first arrived here in Ladakh, they found people walking around the streets carrying rosaries and thought, wow, Christianity's gotten here before us. Turns out it wasn't rosaries at all. They were Tibetan Buddhist malas they were carrying for prayer purposes. These are all mala? Mala. But the curious coincidence is that both malas and rosaries have 108 beads. How about this one? This one? Yeah, this one's better.
What's interesting to me is that only Buddhist and Christian prayer beads share this striking similarity.
Assalamu alaikum.
The first established Christian church in Ladakh was the Moravian Mission. They now have a congregation of about 30 families. What I wanted to ask Reverend Gergen about was Notovich's discovery.
Do you think there's any possibility that Jesus Christ may have traveled through India at all?
There was definitely a Jewish-Palestinian influence. But to place Jesus as a person, that he came here, I think it will be difficult for me to absorb.
Yes.
How about the famous scrolls that people say were found by the very man who stayed here? Because the mission was started in 1885, and 1887 you had the famous visitor, the
yes.
Notovich,
Yes.
who says the scrolls were
none
found.
of the Moravian journals, none of the reports report anything of that. We have Moravian missionary reports right from 1850s. None of those journals ever record of any such thing in the Hemis monastery.
Right. I think the scholars that I'm familiar with talk about those famous lost years.
Lost year.
When he was from age 12, he's last seen in Jerusalem, and the parents have to come find him, and he says, I've been doing my father's business.
Yes.
Then we don't hear about him again until, I guess, Luke. We discover him again at age 30.
Yes,
so there is that missing gap.
Yes, that's a sad thing that many people like to take the Bible as a history book. Bible is never a history book. It has a lot of history, but it's not a history book. It has things about kitchen, it's not a cookbook. And that's extremely important. Bible is salvation history. Things that deal with man's redemption. It's not a diary.
The established Christian church denies the Notovich scrolls ever existed, although some people believe it was church authorities who might have stolen them and actually hid them in the Vatican. Others claim they are still in Hemis, buried deep in secret vaults. I am following in Notovich's footsteps to the legendary Hemis Gompa.
Up here somewhere is Hemis Gompa. It's really exciting to get here. I mean, this is the epicenter of the whole controversy where Notovich found the scrolls. It's mysterious, it's magical, it's really a very high moment, and I'm excited to be here to see what I can find. The scrolls would absolutely prove that Jesus did not come fully formed, that Jesus came to teach and to learn while traveling in the East, and that in many ways Hinduism and Buddhism contributed to the teachings that Jesus brought back to Palestine, which is a very exciting sort of coming together of faiths and ideas. You know, this place really is out of the way, and that's one of the reasons that the stuff's supposed to be here, that over centuries, other monasteries were flooded or rampaged and ransacked. But this place, actually, out of the way as it is, has been a repository for all kinds of stuff. And that's the reason I think if anything's going to be here, it'll be here to see. And check this out. Wow. Beautiful, beautiful roof. Beautiful mandala. Just wonderful. It's obviously had a lot of moisture come through it, but here you can still see all the primary Buddhas in a mandala that I can't really decipher, but again, a lot of painstaking time has been placed here. This must be the entrance to the monastery. Huh. I think I can see it finally, the lost world of mysterious Hemis Monastery. It is a trek, man. It really is a ways, but I guess that's why it's worth showing up here. Let's see what they got in store for us. This is great. Jule! Jule! Oh! Jule! Tashi delek! Tashi delek! Tashi delek! Tashi delek! Tashi delek! Tashi delek! What does he say?
So, what is your purpose to visit this monastery?
Oh, well, would you explain? I'm here asking about the legend of Saint Isa. Does he know anything? Has he heard of Saint Isa? Anything about this?
No, so control issues ko lagyan sana hala Yurushkop kas de zara noktio.
Oh, yeah. Ido ga jang ngomani nga ja matano yo kya ga han kuni hetu ke hetino.
He says, he has heard about this, visit of Isa to this monastery. And several people have been coming to this monastery for many years, sometime with some books, some information, but only that he has information.
Could we sit down for 1 minute? And, ek minute? Jukes? Maybe. Here.
The old monk had heard of the scrolls, but he couldn't tell me if they were still at Hemis. If they were, he said, they would be in the Zognath, or dark storeroom.
Would you ask them if it's possible for us to see the storeroom?
필록 나만 잘년 처음에 가 젖nak 보여 놓고 띄워 주세요. So he says, only the Rinpoche, the head Lama, who's in Tibet now, only he is authorized. I mean, he can open it. He comes, frequently. After a gap of 5 years, 6 years, but he himself has not seen that storeroom. Only heard about it.
Without the head monk, who only comes every 5 or 6 years, I won't get into the secret storeroom. I had to look around, but the only scrolls I found were standard Buddhist texts.
It is a disappointment to come to Hemis and to leave empty-handed. I didn't think I'd find anything, but you never know. The excitement is to be in the place where the scrolls were found, to be in the place where the whole, you read the books and everybody talks about Hemis, you see the old pictures. I'm sort of more involved, more excited having been here. And I'd like to see what else I might do, because there are still monasteries in this part of the world that people have not gone to ask these questions. That might be the next step.
Julie.
Julie, how are you?
Very good, how are you?
Good.
Pleased to meet you.
Where are you from?
I'm from Los Angeles.
No.
Where are you from?
Well, California, man.
Oh, beautiful.
Nice to meet you. What are you doing here?
I came to Leh for a meditation. And I get to Ladakh and I found out that Jesus was here. And Jesus walked here in India before he was crucified and after he was crucified.
Do you know what I'm doing here? I'm making a TV show about Jesus in the Himalayas, man. Swear to God. Wow. Except we're having trouble because we were just talking to the monks and they claim that they don't know anything about the scrolls that supposedly are here.
A month ago, I went up to top to Gotsang and I met a little Lama that I'd met down here the day before, and he brought me into a room, and I was standing there, and I looked at him, and I said, "You have records of Jesus here?" And he just went like this. And there were scrolls all over the walls. And today I was up in the same room, and the monk didn't know.
Wow. Did he take anything out? Did he translate anything? Did he?
No, because he spoke very little English. We couldn't communicate very well.
Yeah.
But I know that when I got up to Gotsang and I reached the place, that the energy there was so powerful that it knocked me down on my feet, and I laid there and I cried for a while. And the light of God was flowing through my body very, very strongly, telling me that I'm standing in a place and the things that I have read are truth. And I know that Jesus has spent much time there, and I know that. And I feel it.
Incredible.
It was great to meet someone who knew and believed the story, but I wanted to talk to a local scholar. I met Abdul Ganachek at a gompa close to Hemis, where a ritual masked dance was being performed. Abdul told me that 20 years after Notovich, a Hindu scholar translated the same scrolls, and that in the 1930s, an American traveler saw them again. He believes the scrolls did exist. His only question is, where did they go?
In the past now, the valuable books of some gompas were even at the disposal of administrators. During those days, these people had a lot of influence now. And there are instances when some very good books were taken away from the gompas.
So you're saying there were political authorities during the 1940s that could have accessed this dark room
they could do like that.
and had taken away
there are
scrolls.
instances. They had a lot of influence in those days.
So it could have been British administrators, it could even have been the Moravian Mission.
No, this is a very sensitive question.
Yeah. Okay. We've recently heard about this Nubra Valley, which is just over the hill here, over that 18,000-foot pass.
Yeah.
It's only been open to visitors for a handful of years, and there are some large monasteries up in that direction. Is that a place we might take a look to see if there's any stories or even any scrolls hidden away in some dark room?
Yeah, I appreciate it now. You must try. Yeah, it is possible, yeah. One day we may get this precious scroll. Yeah.
It's worth a trip.
Yeah, it is worth the trip, yeah.
After talking to Abdul Ganachek, I was really hopeful. The scrolls, according to him, likely do exist. I mean, there's no reason for forgery. They were seen a number of times by different individuals, and if so many folks have seen them, been told they exist, that they probably do exist. I think personally, it's more likely that someone had a vested interest in seeing them vanish, and they simply disappeared. And without them, there's no evidence that any of this is really true. With them, the course of religious history would be changed. Well, I'm leaving Leh now, having spoken to some folks that actually are familiar with the legend, so that's encouraging. Some folks saying there's no evidence, others saying the evidence is irrefutable. So, the real key to this whole thing are the scrolls, the elusive scrolls of Notovich. And until someone finds something like that, the story remains pretty much just a mystery.
The Notovich scrolls remain the only piece of evidence that could finally prove Jesus came to India. They could be as valuable as the Turin Shroud or the Dead Sea Scrolls, and yet they have disappeared without a trace. The scrolls seen by Notovich were copies of originals last seen in Tibet before the Chinese destroyed most of the Buddhist libraries. Hearing that other copies were made, Jeff heads into the Nubra Valley on the Silk Route toward Tibet in the hope that some of these rare texts may have been preserved in this little explored region. Jeff will visit the remote monastery at Disket, but first he must cross the highest motorable pass in the world.
So, this is the pass, huh?
Yeah, this is the highest road and the highest temple in the world.
Wow, 18,380 feet.
Yeah.
Incredible, and snowing.
Snowing, huh? Very cool.
Very cool. Whoa. Look at this, every god and guru concealable.
A lot of Hindu deities and Dalai Lama also.
Dalai Lama?
Yeah.
Whoa, look who's here. We have found Jesus in the Himalayas.
Yeah, Jesus also.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. And there's Mary as well?
Mary as well, yeah.
All right, what a great place. Every faith pretty much is represented here at 18,300 feet. There's all kinds of sects of yogis. Most relevant here is there's a sect called the Nath Yogis that trace their entire lineage back to Isha Nath, or Jesus Nath, who they claim was a teacher who came from the West. Inspired them to break down the caste system, equality and all that. And he left back for the West where he was crucified, and they still talk about that story. So that's part of the legend as well.
It's great that I've met scholars who have researched the legend, but I'm still hoping to meet someone who has heard tales of Jesus from local folklore. We arrived at the end of the road, close to the border with Pakistan, where sporadic fighting means tourists just don't get to go any further.
Okay, Jeff, this is Hundar village.
This is Nubra Valley, end of the road in the highest part of the world. The war is taking place about half hour up that way. There's active shelling going on, so this is as far as tourists are allowed.
So I'm going to see if I can find the Gompa and ask some questions. Nubra was the old caravan route to Tibet. Nubra has some large monasteries. Nubra's been seldom visited. So I'm hoping, just hoping, I might meet some Lama, I might gain his confidence, and he might show me something amazing in some locked room somewhere. That would be incredible.
On the way to Diskit Gompa, I talked with my camel handler Zahur, and at last I found someone who had heard the legend of Jesus in India from his ancestors.
Have you ever heard about these scrolls? About Jesus Christ being in India? Do you know anything about that?
In India, I heard something about Jesus Christ in Kashmir.
In Kashmir, really?
Yeah, really, I heard it about Jesus Christ came into Kashmir, and someone is saying the Holy Jesus Christ came in Ladakh, also in Himalaya region.
You've heard that thing?
Yeah, I heard someone.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Some Ladakhis know the story?
Some Ladakhi you consult from the older people.
Old people,
Yeah,
no?
old people. They might say something about the Jesus
Really?
Christ. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
fascinating. Yeah. That's good to know. Maybe we're on the right track after all here. It was great this morning, riding with Zahur and getting to know him and hear his stories, and he told me the whole legend, which is wonderful, not from a scholar, but from a person that just knows it from his own youth. And in some ways, you know, the story about the tomb takes me right back to the start of my quest, which is great.
As I joined the puja at Diskit, I thought of everything I'd heard on my journey. The tomb in Kashmir that Professor Hasnain says is the last resting place of Jesus. The Notavit scrolls which are said to describe Jesus' journey east. The references to Jesus in Hindu text dating from the 1st century. Those Buddhist malas with the same number of beads as a rosary, and all the other similarities between Christianity and Buddhism that suggest they may have had some ancient connection. I haven't found definitive proof, but put it all together, and it does make me wonder. Because I've come looking for scrolls, I persuaded the monks to let me into their library.
May I take a look at some of these books?
Yes.
Yes? Wonderful.
I still hope I'll stumble across something that mentions Jesus. There are hundreds of scrolls here, so I may be some time.
Is it possible to see another book?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
Yeah.
Good. Is there other monasteries I can go to?
Yes. 5 monasteries in there.
5 monasteries in Nubra.
If we ever did find proof that Jesus was here, it would change the way we think about religion, and it could be quite challenging.
A lot of folks are not going to like what I have to say based upon what I've experienced, because there are fundamentalists who insist on fragmenting and separating people by religion. I feel the importance of this story is it does the opposite, that we no longer have the luxury of separating ourselves according to beliefs, and that this story is a way to look at bringing faiths together by looking at the things we share, that we overlap, that we have in common as human beings. Well, you know what, a journey like this is like the same as looking for Shangri-La. It's really a mythic journey. It's about coming and having a sense of wonder, a sense of adventure, asking questions, going back inspired. And I don't imagine that 2,000 years ago was much different. I can easily imagine a young kid in Palestine, 12, 13 years old, joining a caravan route, seeking a great adventure, full of wonder, coming back 18 years later transformed. I may never know for sure if Jesus came here, but I'll never forget the fact that I did.